SiGMA Asia presents Business to Government. In conversation with Marco Antonio Urera, Board Director of DFNN Inc.
Mr. Urera, thank you for coming to speak to us during SiGMA Asia. What do you think of the conference, first of all?
Well, it's been very insightful. A lot of guest speakers that were sharing their thoughts on how the gaming industry is evolving. So I found it very productive and insightful.
Can you share with us your role within your organization?
Yes, although I sit as a board member and a board of director of the DFNN group, I do lead one of our subsidiaries called iWave, and we are involved with various technologies or various business units. Some of them involve biometric solutions, some of them involve unified messaging systems, and some of them are involved in AI technologies.
And what's the role of your organization?
Yes, our role specifically in the area of iWave, we try to encourage the movement of digital assets, whether that come in a form of stable coins and other type of digital assets. But we're seeing the world is getting smaller, and everybody seems to be wanting to uh, offer their products and services on a global scale. Although the Philippines has been positioned to have its own market, we are seeing many players today trying to reach out to a global market. And we feel the presence of our special economic zones, like in Bataan and in CESA, are able to accommodate people who are trying to reach out to a global community.
What's the position of the Philippines when it comes to stablecoins?
Well, it's a fairly young industry and a fairly young initiative of government. When it comes to stable coins, the regulators are catching up. They're learning from what other regulators are doing. I don't think the dust has settled yet. I think they are constantly monitoring it, but certainly technology has been adopting it quicker than the regulators are able to implement guidelines. So to a certain extent, the regulators are opening it up by creating sandboxes for people like our company to try out different solutions. And as they see us progress, then they develop regulation by design to encourage investment and more people to participate in these exchanges.
You're speaking about sandboxes, testing, innovation, creativity. There's also regulation. How do you find the balance between regulation and creativity? Where do you draw the line?
Yes, that's a very good question. Regulation and technology adoption are two different things. And the regulator's main job is to protect the investors and the citizens and so on and so forth, right? That's their job. But sometimes when you over-regulate, you also shoot yourself in the foot, so to speak, right? So there is a balance that is needed. Technology, from my perspective, is the easier thing to address. There are challenges in technology, but it's really the regulations that hold us back. So to a certain extent, it's a give and take. We have to learn to educate our regulators. To show them what is being done and how you're doing it. Be transparent so that you gain a sense of confidence when they do regulation that it can be implemented and sustainable. But you're right, it's a tricky balancing act between technology adoption and regulation at the same time.
When it comes to regulation, do you see harmonization in regulation for technology?
Yes, there's always different points of views, right? It depends on which point of view are you coming from. To a certain extent, you'd like the government to be able to collect its own share of the pie, so to speak, whether that comes in the form of taxation, whether it encourages employment and get the wheels of the economy going. But at the same time, when you over-regulate, your customer journey is hampered. Sometimes it's, simple things like onboarding, KYC, or know your client. You can go drastically in your requirements. You can have something as simple as your name, your phone number, your email address, and you're done. But you can go even deeper than that. If regulation says, no, I need a copy of your passport, I need a copy of your police clearances, I need a birth certificate, then you're making it harder for an actor to come in, or whether a player wants to come in or an operator wants to come in. So it's a balancing act. To a certain extent, if you design regulation properly, which some areas are beginning to open up with, it encourages investment. It encourages players. It encourages the wheels of the gaming economy to move. But it's also counterproductive when you over-regulate and you make it very difficult for people to come on board. It reminds me the early stages of e-wallets, for instance. Today, everybody's using Apple Pay, Revolut, you name it. A lot of your payment solutions today are done over your cell phone. But take us back not too long ago, 5, 6, 7 years, regulation had its way of preventing that from happening. We were forced into it because of the pandemic. That contactless solution they were looking for, finally they were open to changing the rules of the game and adopting these contactless solutions. Wallets started to become very popular. In fact, today, you can walk all over the place and simply scan a QR code and make your payment without even pulling out your wallet. What took credit card companies decades for people to adopt, it took just a matter of a couple of years for people to adopt. So we're starting to see change. And, any kind of change, you have to anticipate some kind of resistance. Some are faster than others. But regulation has a way of accelerating or slowing down adoption of technology. So if you design it regulation properly, you can get the adoption cycle to speed up. But if you are trying to prevent it from happening, you can get it to slow down. So regulation does have an important role in technology adoption and technology maturity.
What's the position of the Philippines when it comes to stablecoins? And how would you compare that to the rest of the countries in Asia?
Yes, okay. The Philippines has started to progress in that space. The Banco Central of the Philippines, or our central bank, including our Securities and Exchange Commission, have opened up certain licenses to certain groups of people. Unfortunately, right now they've closed it for a while because they wanted to monitor to see those that they've granted those licenses to, how are they doing? What are the risks? What are the new possible risks to the consumer and to the operator at the same time? So to a certain extent, I think they're very open-minded. I'm hoping that after, in the near future, they will actually open it up even further so that other players can come in. Certainly, the traditional way of banking is now threatened. Rural banks, which we have a lot of, and other commercial banks are only starting to adopt these new ways of transacting, these contactless solutions. Some are faster than others. Some have adopted it and embraced it quite quick. Some are a little bit slow, wait and see attitude, and so on and so forth. In fact, we're seeing it, uh, that that kind of character is being seen on a global scale. Some communities, especially the young community, have adopted and embraced e-wallet solutions or payment solutions that are contactless. Some countries, however, just like Japan, until today, they still use hard currency cash. There are certain stores until today that you can go around Japan, Tokyo, Osaka, you name it,
Mhm.
and they don't accept any form of electronic currency, but they still are very traditional in
There
that
are
sense.
places that are the other way around also.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And we're seeing some countries adopting it quicker than
Mhm.
others. Now, the reasons being, I guess it's on a case-to-case basis. Some are ready and prepared to monitor it, and while others are not. So, and it's also a cultural thing. Like I mentioned, Japan in that context, they still value their notes. They cash is still king. And but in other communities that like the Philippines, for instance, the adoption on digital currencies or digital wallets or e-wallets they call it has been quite aggressive.
Mm.
In fact, almost maybe about 95 million Filipinos today have some form of an e-wallet and they transact. My kids, they don't get allowances from me anymore on cash. They just say, "Hey dad, just send it over to me on my e-wallet." And the behavior has changed.
Mm. You spoke about traditional banks. Uh, unless traditional banks evolve, they're going to be non-existent in a few years. Do you
You're
agree with that?
I do agree with that. In fact, yes, they will become dinosaurs of their craft if they don't adopt. The market and the behavior is changing, and we're seeing that quite strongly. And it's something that, especially the young, the 35 and under, have embraced it. They hardly even bring their wallet these days. It's everything is on their cell phone or everything is on a wearable or on that. Yes, if the writing is on the wall, it's heading down that way. Some countries are adopting it much quicker than others, but certainly electronic forms of currencies are being adopted in all sectors, whether it be retail, whether it be gaming, whether it be the lottery, whether it be even how you trade stock on the exchange today. You can do it all from your phone. So yes, it's certainly heading down that way. And I believe if banks do not adopt these changes, I think they'll become a dinosaur in the next 5 to 10 years.
What do you foresee technology-wise for the Philippines in the next 5 years?
Oh, well, the adoption all over the place of biometric solutions, for instance. You can go from one country to another, you enter their airport. Some still are traditional. You show your passport, your boarding pass, and you go through immigrations, customs, and so on and so forth. Now, in some airports that I've been to in the last 6 months, I didn't even have to bring out my passport anymore. My face was the passport. So biometric solutions are being adopted for KYC, and it's done in banking. It's done in other types of industries, not only for immigrations, customs, airlines. Again, different industries have embraced technology faster than others. I wish other industries would adopt technology that way. For instance, agriculture is another sector that could have a lot of room to adopt technology. I think there's so much opportunity in that space. But biometrics alone is already a game changer in how people are reacting, the expectations of what things can be done. I could look at my phone and I don't need to put in my username and password anymore to do a banking transaction. It authenticates who I am, that I am the rightful owner of that account, simply by looking at my face. To a certain extent, some people have technologies that you can point your camera to your fingers and it picks up the fingerprint without even you putting it on a pad. So again, these are technologies I think that are ripe, ready for adoption, but it has to work with regulators. At the end of the day, if the regulators choose to adopt it, then they should pass regulation that will allow it to happen. If they, on the contrary, if they choose to slow it down, then the adoption cycle also slows down along with it.
How do you foresee biometrics impacting the gaming industry?
Oh, I think, KYC, the combination of biometrics and artificial intelligence together combined and other forms of machine learning, I think will create how do I say it, a different gaming experience, so to speak. You're able to come up to a machine or a game console or a game machine and the machine will know who you are. It will be able to also address your behavior. And it will also be able to address what you like to do or what you don't like to do. So it's be able to personalize your experience, so to speak. I think biometrics and artificial intelligence and other technologies like that can create a much better gaming experience, I think, to the gamer.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to speak to us.
Pleasure.